My name's John Pasfield, and the title of this reading will be The Mammoth Cheese Video 3, The Reflective Journal. This is my novel, James McIntyre, The Mammoth Cheese, novel by John Pasfield, an historical photograph from 1866 of the mammoth cheese. It's inside a container, protective container. It's on a wagon. It's surrounded by all the people who are so proud of it. Here's the summary on the back of the novel. With a contribution of 800 cows, the tiny village of Ingersoll, Ontario, Canada, has not only produced the world's largest block of cheese, it has also nurtured the epic poet who can rapturously sing its praises. Now, if only Queen Victoria can be persuaded to take a hearty bite and add her majestic voice to the poet's ecstatic hymns of praise, the mammoth cheese will become the edible jewel in the crown of the globe-girdling British Empire. Well, 1866, a sun never sets on the British Empire, and so on. So quite an achievement if they can pull it off. That's the quest of this novel, to become the cheese of the British Empire. In this video, I'm going to read from the journal, which I wrote as a response to the rough draft of the novel as I was polishing it before sending it on to my publisher. The title of the journal is The Making of James McIntyre, The Mammoth Cheese, and it can be accessed for free on my website, johnpassfield.ca, johnpassfield.ca. The novel is 36,000 words, and the journal is a little larger, 42,000 words. In this journal, I'm going to present 5 passages as a sample of what the Mammoth Cheese Journal contains. So here's the first one that I've selected from those 42,000 words. The human mind is, I believe, a place of harmonizing and warring image arcs, all seeking to have influence on the uber image pattern that will become the operative image pattern in the mind concerning the situation with which the main character is presently dealing, or, perhaps, concerning such lofty considerations as the meaning of one's life so far, or even the meaning of the universe. Actually, I believe that these concerns are not exclusive, and it is possible that the image which seeks to influence one of these concerns can have an influence on the imagery of one or more of the other concerns. I believe that we humans all think of all of the topics, personal, societal, cosmic, but that we all think individually in terms of 3 dashes here. I'll number them. 1, the importance of each category of thought. Obviously, a philosopher thinks more about cosmic ideas, and a more everyday person thinks more of, well, how am I going to get through the day? How am I going to pay for my lunch and save some for the mortgage, right? So the importance of each category of thought is 1. 2, the power of the imagery that is generated by our minds. Shakespeare obviously had a very powerful image-creating mind. Others less so. The level of consciousness or subconsciousness at which these images and image arcs influence our thinking and at times our behavior. There are people who are very deliberate and very conscious in their thinking, and others who just seem, we might say, out of control. But sometimes they do everything right and things work out, and yet they don't seem to do much thinking. Well, they're thinking subconsciously. They're doing the right thing because their subconscious mind is giving them these urges that make them successful in life or make them very unsuccessful. So the level of consciousness that a person has about these image patterns in their mind. Okay, that was number 1. Here's the second section I've picked out of the journal. I was wondering about the basic premise of the proposed novel. Every novel of mine is a novel of thinking. The text is the record of the thinking of the main character at a certain moment of his or her life and on a single major topic with many subsidiary topics which bear on the main question that is being explored. In effect, each of my novels is a quest novel. The story, the image story of the main character in quest of his or her true self. Not that every main character of mine is lost. The image pattern that is being made in the mind of the main character is not necessarily in quest of something that he has not yet attained. It might be in quest of a deeper understanding of something that has been attained and is being appreciated as having been worth attaining. It is an attempt to turn the information of the life of the main character, both past information, which we would call memory, and present information, which we would call perception, into pertinent and therefore operative imagery, whether to change the life that's being lived and about to be lived, or to simply steady the ship in order to keep the ship on the already charted and now more deeply approved course. Well, that was the second passage. Here's the third passage from the journal. It was on Thursday, December 3rd, 2020, 8 months ago, as I was writing this 8 months ago, that I looked at the sources of a potential novel on this topic and came up with what I considered might be the dynamic of the proposed novel. That concept included 4 aspects of the proposed story situation. So here are 4 elements that I thought would be in this novel. Number 1, the poem about the great cheese. 2, the everyday life in Ingersoll with memories of material losses by flood and fire and the personal loss of James McIntyre's first wife. 3, the past-present dynamic in the mind of the main character. So he's very concerned not only with the present, but with memory, with the past. So that would be number 3. 4, the fantasy life as a friend of the great poets and the reality of his own low-level poems. So here's a man who feels a kinship with Shakespeare and Chaucer and Keats and Shelley, but are his poems on their level? So that would be an element in the novel. A plan for a novel, an expected 50,000-word novel, is both a single concept and a complex of supporting concepts. Each filament of a spider web is both independent and connected to the whole. At this point, I probably realized that a novel was available to be written. Well, that's number 3. Here's number 4 of the passages that I've chosen. I'm fascinated by the concept of negative imagery, non-imagery, not imagery, missing in action imagery, away without leave imagery. My 3-day examination of the imagery of Keats led me to think, perhaps for the first time, of black hole imagery. What do we do if the key images of a novel are not present in the novel? If the absence of the significant imagery of the story is the story? Just as the absence of an adventure is the adventure. What do we as readers do then? And here's number 5 of these passages that I've chosen. On Saturday, December 5th, 2020, I considered the possibility of 2 minds thinking alike. That Emily Bronte, whose mind I had explored in my 23rd novel, here it is, Emily Bronte, More Myself Than I, a novel by John Pascal. That's Emily Bronte's self-sketch there, the historical Emily Bronte's self-sketch. Notice her face is turned away from what we would consider to be the camera or from the viewer. So that was my 23rd novel. And James McIntyre, whose mind I was about to explore in the proposed novel, James McIntyre, The Mammoth Cheese, which would be my 28th novel. So what's happening here is that something in an earlier novel goes underground maybe for a few novels and then surfaces. 23rd novel, 28th novel, there's obviously 5 novels in between there. So these themes recur, and they recur in very different guises, like James McIntyre, Emily Bronte, are they the same? Well, not on the surface. They would be alike, though, in that each had 2 lives, an actual life and an imaginative life, which they did not keep separate in their minds. In her writings, the historical Emily Bronte does not distinguish between her acquaintances and family on the one hand, and, whoops, get the page turned here, her fictional characters on the other hand. I decided that the main character of my proposed novel, James McIntyre, would also blend the lives of people whom we readers would assume he knows, and people whom we readers would know he does not know, these great poets of the past. Now I would add that I do not wish to write about people who are unique in the workings of their thoughts, so both the fictional Emily Bronte and the proposed fictional James McIntyre I saw as extreme examples of a tendency in all minds including mine, to blend the actual and the fictional in attempts to build image patterns which are designed to be rich with potential for speculative meaning. So we don't just think with the realities of our lives, we think with the fantasies of our lives, and we blend the two. Think of your dreams, and your nightmares. Okay. Those are the 5 passages that I've selected. Here's the conclusion that I wrote with this video in mind. I began to write planning notebooks and journals by accident, in a way. I started my writing career by taking a short story course in which we students were asked to write a story a week. Each assignment had a different topic. The topic one week was to write an imaginative story which was based on an actual event, which had taken place at a location with which the student writer was familiar. We students were asked to add a short note explaining what the original incident had been. Well, as I wrote this note, I found myself explaining not the meaning of the story, but the technical means by which I had decided to tell the story, and what I had hoped to be able to do in future in terms of the development of a poetic means of storytelling. I also realized that the note was more to myself than to the writing teacher. When I started novel writing, I would write a planning note before writing a chapter and a reflective journal note after writing a chapter. The journal note helped me to answer the question, where do I go from here? As I became able to plan a whole novel, I changed my note-making strategy. I wrote the planning note as I worked on the whole novel, and I wrote the journal after I had the complete rough draft of the novel and was in the polishing stage. So that's been standard now for a long time for me, and was what I did with this novel. As before, the question that I wanted to explore was, where do I go from here? But it now applied to the next novel and even to the next 2 or 3 novels. I'm convinced that I could not have written as many novels, nor have developed the form of the poetic novel to its present state of complexity and flexibility, if I had not devised the means of looking ahead and back as I worked my way through what is now 32 writing process experiences. So that includes 29 novels and 3 novellas. And the journals and the notebooks are what have helped me, even allowed me to write that many books. So lastly, this journal can be accessed for free on my website, johnpassfield.ca, johnpassfield.ca. And thank you for watching this video.